I'm doing. Or I'm also very alert, of game in the area. Deer, turkey, whatever. Squirrels. I'm always looking around. Minding my surroundings. Seeing what my resources are for if I needed to hunt or whatever. And when I'm out there building, I'm totally zoned out from, any stress in my life. Anything that's, been a burden on me for that week. When I'm out there, I'm just totally at one with nature and doing what I do. So it's basically more that, I get into that spiritual element where I feel like I can just be me and do my thing and just kind of let loose and, let my hands create what I want to build.
When you're in a survival mode, what is your favorite part of the survival tasks?
I would say the bushcraft, like building shelters. That's my favorite thing. I love to go out there and make something out of nothing. Cut trees down and start building something that you can live in. That right there is just like the ultimate high for me to be able to create something, and it's a lot of hard work, and then I feel accomplished after I get it done.
Talking about that, did you watch the show with Matt Graham when he did the bushcraft show where they were competing? Because I thought that was really interesting. The way that he would tell them, take them to certain areas and say, you need to build a place that you can live for 6 months to a year. And you're going to be graded on livability, sustainability, the uniqueness of it, how good it was built. And then I just thought that was just really interesting, the way that he did that, and the way that people thought outside the box.
Right, because every person has their own way or style of what they're going to build, whether it's a lean-to or it's a hut or a wiki up or, or they want to build a log cabin. I mean, everybody's going to have a different style and way, or that their idea of what a shelter would be. But if you're talking about Bushcraft Build Off, right? That's the show. I didn't get to watch maybe a few episodes, and then I lost my cable when I was in Kansas. Was when I was watching that, so I didn't get to watch a lot of it. But I know what show you're talking about.
Yeah, like I said, I really like that, and so you people know there are so many. It's like ghost hunting. You've got 10 shows about ghost hunting. In the survival world, there are so many shows, and one of them is Mountain Men. And near us, we have one of the guys, Jason Hawk. He lives in Arkansas, in the Ozarks, and he makes knives. He's also, I think he was on Forged in Fire, maybe, or they're trying to talk him into going on there. So he's very interesting kind of guy. He was also on some other show when he was in Arizona. I didn't see him then, so I couldn't tell you what that show was. But if you've seen Mountain Men, some of these
I love that
people actually do survival stuff as well. But on the homestead type of survival, as opposed to going out in the wild for short term. And that's kind of what you do more, is the short term type of survival as opposed to the homestead type, right?
I mean, I do camp out for several nights at a time sometimes, and I'm out there for a while. I mean, I have 2 camps. One's a winter camp, one's a summer camp. And I stock them full of supplies, and those are actually places I go to train and also to bug out. in case of a situation, a disaster, or economic collapse.
Right. So is this the place that you would go if you're being chased by the Greene County Sheriff on live PD? You're going to go to one of those bug out camps?
Yes, yeah. They're very remote. They're very remote, and like nobody could find me.
So I'm, as you can tell, it sounds like I watch a lot of TV, but I really don't. I mean, it's just, we know what we like, and that's really, when I'm talking about this stuff, this is the stuff that Ron and I watch together, and we watch these shows. And when I was talking earlier about dual survival, I've said this before to people when I had on Daniel Shergley, who's he's on the Ultimate American Ninja on Discovery, on the Discovery Go app. I had him on my show previously, and I've said this to Ron, and I said it to you, that dual survival was named wrong. It needed to be, they spelled it wrong. They needed to spell it DUEL as opposed to DUAL, because it seemed like all they did was fight. Well, after I talked to you earlier this afternoon, I looked up some stuff, and it's like, oh my goodness, it's more dueling than I thought.
Yeah, it was. Because they were taking one former military person who's a survivalist versus, a primitive survivalist. So they were, that's what you're right. They were dueling. So it was like they put two different styles, two different personalities against each other to, see if they would get along.
And it was, it was like oil and water all the time. So everyone, we've got another break coming up here. So come back in 3 minutes. We're WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be back in a few.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal, Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I'm Denise Pridemore, your host, and I am talking with J.C. Phillips, current survival consultant and past paranormal investigator. We have a question in the chat room for you from Joe. He wants to know if you've ever encountered a Bigfoot.
Just like we were talking earlier, those two stories I told you was about, when I was like 11 or 12 and I seen that dark figure at the end of the driveway, and then that, a story about me and my ex-wife camping and hearing those T-posts. But other than that, nothing real close up where I could say I could, be 100% sure that, I had a close-up encounter.
Well, thank you for answering the question. I appreciate that so much. So,
no problem.
The next question is going to be, if you were to encounter a Bigfoot, what do you think you would do?
I would stop and just analyze it and watch its movement, see if it compares to like a bear or something. Those would be close in size, give or take. And just, try to be still and verify what I see. Take, 5 seconds. Stop and observe any strange smells in the area, and see if there's any evidence around me of any more. But usually, most people only see one, so.
Yeah. So, have you ever heard of Momo the Monster?
No, that's a new one. I've never heard that.
Actually, it's an old one.
Really?
Yeah, that's the name that they gave the Bigfoot that was sighted in Missouri. I believe it was back in the 1970s near Louisiana, Missouri. Friend of mine, I believe it's Ron Matlock, was telling me about him because it was in his town where he was found. I think. Don't quote me on that, but it was in Missouri, and Ron, when I first met him, he was teasing me about the fact that there was a Momo the Monster, that they would go in the woods hunting Momo the Monster all the time. What was it, Sioux Passage Park that you would go to in St. Louis looking for Momo? So there is actually Monsters and Mysteries in America. Talked to some people about Momo, and it was in the newspapers and all kinds of stuff back in the 70s about that. So, you'll have to find out more about that, but it's more north of St. Louis on the Mississippi. So, but there you go. That was a question from Charles Anthony, a good friend of ours. So, when you were talking about that river monster that you said was like a mini Loch Ness monster, where I grew up, we had one named Chessie, the Chesapeake monster. So Chessie the sea monster in the Chesapeake Bay. So maybe it's just anywhere where there's a body of water, we have to have a sea monster.
Yeah, what I've kind of come to the conclusion of that is it's some kind of dinosaur that that swims in water. They kind of have fins that they probably got stuck in the ice age, and they thawed out, like cryo stage, and that and they've stayed alive after the ice age, and they're still stuck in those lakes or whatever.
So, like I said, I know there are some big fish in our river, Lake of the Ozarks, Truman Lake, things like that. Have you ever seen anything in any of our waterways that would make you go, hey, this might really truly be some kind of, that we need to investigate to see if there really is a river monster in here, or it's just a big agar.